Okay, let's talk about introverted intuition or perspectives. Now, this is the preferred perceiving function for all NJ types, right? And SPs will have this in their ego syntonic functions, but they're going to be in either the 10-year-old or the 3-year-old position in the car model. But let's talk about the other part of intuition. So introverted intuition perspectives, analytic holistic. What does this look like?
Okay. So introverted intuition or perspectives is a function that runs simulations into the future.
Mm-hmm.
It shifts perspectives from different people. And its desire is to be prepared, really, is to know what's coming and to not just be prepared, but also be able to manifest something into the future.
Also, meaning making comes into this.
That's right.
Creating the meaning out of our experiences.
That's right.
It's like the meta meaning of all the things that were happening to us and what our lives mean and all of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I think actually, fortunately, and I kind of patted myself on the back, patted you on the back as well, that I think we've actually done a good job of representing both sides of intuition, both the analytic and the holistic. But what we can talk about is which qualities and characteristics of this function fall on which side. So the analytic version of introverted intuition is, Dario calls it the visionary.
Mm-hmm.
And this is that running the simulation. It's a vision into the future. It's the function that doesn't just future pace into the future, but also tries to make it happen, right? Now, this is a little different than the extroverted intuition version. That version is seeing all the different possibilities and doesn't really have a clear idea, just has like sort of a sense, right? This is going to be a big thing. I can feel it. I know it's going to be a big deal. And all of us need to get on board to focus on this possibility, and we'll all get to see what it is when we get there. Yeah. That's more of the extroverted intuition version. The introverted intuition version is a lot more buttoned up, right? It's not just deciding a vision. It's like running a simulation of the most likely future. All right. So it does see it into, right? It's cutting things out that are possibilities that would be disruptions. Things that could happen are not as interesting. What will happen is more interesting. And once a vision is created running these simulations, there is some variance, right? There's like, well, it could go down this way, but it could also go down this way. And all we'd have to do is maybe just do a couple different tweaks. And that's the one. That is the future simulation that I like the most. So I'm going to vision into that future that simulation, like that particular vision. Now, obviously, there's a little bit of tunnel vision that can come from this, right? Because it's an insistence on a specific future.
I think maybe a good example we could talk about is somebody that was at the founding of the country I live in, the United States of America. Whether or not this person had this function as a strength, I think that Thomas Jefferson was seeing a vision down into the future, because in the founding documents of our country, the Declaration of Independence, when the United States declared independence from England in 1776, it was the inalienable rights, and there were 3 of them: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. He almost had this vision of the future that it's not an attainable goal of happiness. It's going to be a pursuit. And I need to write a flexibility into this document and the way we think about this in the future that gives us enough trajectory and movement, right? And even later in the United States, the history and the collective experience, this idea of manifest destiny is almost like this vision of moving west and expansion and all of these ideas. And I think that's a little bit like that introverted intuition perspectives moving forward. It's like there was a lot of metaphor, the United States being a city on the hill, as a beacon of light to the world. Whether or not that's become true, today, hundreds of years later, there was a lot of metaphor and there's a lot of imagery on like the dollar. There's like all this imagery laden with symbology.
Everybody thinks this is the Illuminati.
Right. Yeah. The buildings in Washington, D.C. were mapped out and constructed to kind of create this certain image and this story, neo-colonial architecture to harken back to ancient Greece and Rome, to give a sense of structure and stability to this brand new country that just started up. Like all these factors that were put in, I think there was a lot of, from the person himself of Jefferson, but a lot of the thinking that was put in, I think, was this introverted, intuitive thinking to the future. building something that's going to stand the test of time. At least that was the intent behind it.
Right.
So I think that might, as I'm trying to pattern and create an example, maybe that's not a great example, but I think that's a pretty good example of kind of thinking about what's coming down the road and moving toward it in more of assertive, analytic way.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that that's a fantastic example, actually. And I might, I might actually be doing a little bit of a disservice by talking about running all the probable simulations in such an ordered way, because I think even with the analytic version of introverted intuition or perspectives, I think it doesn't necessarily have to be that rational. Like, it doesn't have to be something that was created through this really complex, like running these complex simulations and all of this rumination. Like, sometimes it can just strike a person, right? With introverted intuition or perspectives, they oftentimes say that it kind of hits them, like a vision does, or something, like they just get a piece of information. And so I think, actually, I want to read something that Dario said that I think is a really, it's a good way of sort of capturing how this can show up for a person. And I think Thomas Jefferson and his concepts of it may have been through depth and thinking and running simulations and all that, or it could have just been something that struck him at some point as like, these are the things. This is the future that I want.
Well, he was under the influence of a lot of Enlightenment writers and thinkers, right? That influenced his thought. Immanuel Kant, people like that.
Yep. Dario says, there's a special willpower that comes with this introverted intuition, a certainty around it that's really compelling. The result is a lot of drive, which easily leads to tunnel vision. The person won't water down his or her visions. They won't let it go. And they'll recruit insights and realizations as principles to support the vision and make it happen, meaning that more information that comes in will then be aimed at the vision that's already there. Does that track? It's like everything gets recruited to support the vision, which is why it can become tunnel vision. He says the realizations can feel and look analytical, as if it's something arrived at by logic or deep contemplation. And the result is a complex idea, a concept with an analytic quality. But the tip-off is that the idea is often graphical in nature, and the path that birthed it is murky at best. It's like, where are the receipts? And they might not always have them. They might not have all of the logic that led the person there. And so it really isn't deeply analytical or contemplative necessarily. It might just be a vision that struck them.
Well, and when the reality changes, and thinking that is so focused, tunnel vision on analytic perspectives, the reality happens and they refuse to change the perspective they've locked into. I mean, I've seen that.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go into detail. I've seen that in the political realm recently where there's some like literal things happening that everybody knows is true. But the story is this alternate reality. And I'm noticing people are like repeating it and taking any information that conflicts it, and they still somehow contort it to make sense on this narrative that they've decided.
Yeah.
And they're trying to analytically like make this narrative true no matter what the data is. We're going to reframe every piece of reality to fit the narrative we've decided.
Yep.
And I think that's where it goes too far, obviously.
Yeah. And I like the word recruit. They recruit information to support a narrative or to support a vision of the future that they've decided will improve it.
Yeah.
And
it's probably good intent with most people.
Yeah. Well,
there's probably some bad intent in some people, but most people have good intent around it.
And that's kind of irrelevant. It's just how it works.
What's relevant to me, Antelia?
That's right.
I care if people have good intent or not.
Intent is super important.
It's the most important, isn't it?
It's kind of irrelevant. It's just how the operation, it's just how it manifests.
Anyway, continue. I side noted that. Let's go back to the perspective.
That said, I think that's actually a good example of how it can go off the rails.
Yeah.
On the plus side, it means that nothing will get in the way of the vision, and especially if it's a good one. Dario uses Elon Musk as an example, and I don't think Dario is necessarily saying or indicating that Elon Musk is an NI user, like in the traditional sense, like an NJ type. He's just saying that he's probably using analytic NI or introverted intuition or perspectives, no matter where it falls in his stack.
Yeah.
In the sense that it's like everything is about this particular vision. Can we colonize Mars? Can the cars drive on Mars? will this battery work on Mars? It's like every piece of information that comes in is like, does it work on Mars? Right? Like it's all being funneled into this vision. And so I think that is another example of how that would work, not just in narratives and political discourse, but actually in like, I want to make this happen. And I think I can almost feel the moments when your extroverted intuition visions become introverted intuition visions. Like I can almost see that switch because all of a sudden everything is now recruited for that vision.
Yeah.
And so there's a bit of a handoff that happens, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the analytic version. And obviously there's some fixations that can happen there. And that's good and bad, right? Good things and bad things come from that. If it's good, it means nothing gets in their way. If it's bad, it means that they're overconfident about something they're wildly inaccurate around.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's both good and bad.